we're in the same IDF stand now, but we've moved about 100 meters away. And as you can obviously tell, this area has undergone some recent management activities. John, first off, could you just explain what the management objectives are in this site? What are the goals that you're hoping to achieve?
So this is a ecosystem restoration project. We want to try to restore the forest to conditions that existed about 140 years ago. It takes a bit to try to think back then because we've been taught that a forest is all about trees, basically, and that is not the case. You can see on this tree behind us, it has some fire scars. We talked about it before. Fire was in the ecosystem every 2 to 15 years, and it's been excluded. So how do we get back to a more open forest where good fire can go through, restore the plant communities, restore the cultural plants that have gone missing? This is extremely expensive harvesting. It costs more than double what is normally would occur. So that's one of the cool things about being with the Williams Lake First Nation. It's, of course, economics is important, but also is jobs and the cultural community and plants and just the well-being of the forest for future generations. I had an elders tour a month ago, and we came here and that was one of the first questions is what is here for plants, what's coming back. Mm-hmm. They wanted to know where there was super lily so they could pick it. They talk about picking blueberries in the IDF. I've never seen blueberries in the IDF, but I'm actually starting to see some plants coming back.
So part of the idea is that by having a more open canopy forest, there's more light reaching the understory, there's just more resources for the understory plants that will hopefully allow for a wider range to grow.
Where we were before, it was feather moss, a little bit of rose, there was a little bit of juniper, some pea vine, not really a whole lot, with low quantities except for the moss. This area was harvested last winter, so it's not even 6 months, and the plant community is coming back strong. There's lots of grass coming. There's geranium, there's rose, there's the young super lily, heartleaf arnica. That is one thing that I found amazing. It's just a sea of yellow in June. That all happened because it was able to get a little bit more light.
Mm-hmm. So the objectives here, as you said, were to reduce fuel load, allow potentially for fire to come through here in a way closer to what the natural fire regime was before fire suppression and the fuel loading changed, and also to promote the growth of a more diverse understory plant community. So how did the management go about? Can you describe the operations that you undertook here to achieve this?
Yeah, so this is a thin from below where you take the smaller stems and leave the bigger stems. So most of the harvest was under 35 centimeters DBH. We're in a mule deer winter range, mm-hmm. So there is a certain basal area that needs to be retained for that, so that a certain amount to intercept the snow. The bigger trees will get that basal area faster, and they have the lichen for the mule deer, so they're very important.
So you identified kind of the larger dominant trees and then removed the smaller trees that were potentially competing with them to release the larger trees, but then also make things more open in general.
Yeah, I wanted to bring in that mule deer park because it's pretty important, and for why there is still as many trees as possible, or as there is here.
So within areas that are part of the mule deer winter range, there are, which is primarily in the interior Douglas fir, is that? Or at least I know it's an important aspect of management in the interior Douglas fir. You have to meet certain management objectives so that the area is still suitable to support mule deer during the winter months. Is that more or less how it works?
Yeah, we have approximately 22 meters squared of basal area left in these stands for the habitat class that this is. Is that the right level for an open forest to promote the plant communities? You have to balance the different objectives. Normally logging, they would go in, they'd concentrate on the merchantable trees. So that's, well, basically anything over 12.5, although it could be 17.5 centimeters DBH. we took out everything that the buncher could possibly take out. So all of the layer 2, 3s, and even some of the 4s.
So we're really talking about kind of small understory trees.
Yeah,
Okay.
stuff that's not merchantable. It's stuff that would normally be left in the forest, which is our ladder fuels.
Yeah. So in a typical harvest of an area like this, it would be removing the large trees and leaving or not paying as much attention to some of those smaller ones. So you're kind of doing the opposite. So returning to fire, I know that one of the issues with trying to reintroduce fire to these ecosystems is that, like the stand that we were in a minute ago, you can't just do a prescribed burn in there because the risk of those ladder fuels catching fire and it turning into a crown fire, or at least becoming more severe than you intend.
Yeah, no, you're right. You can't just introduce fire without doing some type of treatment. So what we've done is we've removed most of the smaller trees. Tried to the bigger vet trees, like the 60 centimeter plus. We tried to give them a good buffer.
Oh, so you were trying to make sure that you were a little bit heavier in the fuel clearance around those big trees, so that when you do have a fire, it will be lower intensity around those trees.
Yes, and those big trees are something that we're going to lose on the landscape if we don't try to manage it. And if you look at more of the drier ecosystems, there's the big trees, those big limbs that come down to about 6 feet, about where the fire probably stopped doing them.
So if this area had been maintained in a more open stand structure like this, these big veteran trees would have more branches further down, but because it was a closed canopy forest, there was more self-pruning, so their crowns are restricted to the higher part of the tree. So even though you've opened it up, that's one thing that is still different that you can't necessarily get back.
Yeah, exactly. The only way to recreate that is to start with a younger tree.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about how these trees being grown in closed canopy forests, that their structure is going to be different than open grown trees, and then that's going to impact the benefits to wildlife. And I think, is my memory right, that for the mule deer winter range, one of the ideas is also to have these trees with the crowns that are going to intercept some of that snow, so you'll have kind of variation in snow depth. So there are some areas where the deer are able to get to the ground and get to mosses and other things to eat.
More so the lichen off of the big tree. Okay. So these bigger trees grow the lichen that mule deer like, and when the wind blows and stuff, the tree canopies bash each other, and then some of those branches with the lichen come down, and that's important for the mule deer.
I assume there probably are some timber objectives here, but on the whole, the objectives are much more ecological in restoring this forest to closer to what it would have looked like before European settlement and before banning of cultural burning and fire suppression.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's you need money to pay for it, so economics is part, but really if it's a break even, we're happy.
Some of the timber that was removed, was it merchantable?
Because we're taking the smaller stems that have been competing for height, there's about 30% peeler content in these, and we're just taking the small stems, which nobody actually expected.
Was this a profitable operation, or was it kind of a break-even operation? How did it come out in the end?
This one was profitable. Lumber prices were high, so we got a good buying price, and it was reacting to stumpage from before, so stumpage actually had gone down. So we did hit.
So by stumpage, you mean of the money, the revenue that came in, a certain cut of that goes back to the province as stumpage fees.
So we had high markets, lower stumpage, so it worked well.
Getting back to fire, are there specific plans to reintroduce fire to this stand where we are right now?
Yes, we hope to burn probably within 5 years. We did do an understory burn on a project last fall. Lots of learnables. So we did the same type of harvest as here, which leaves a very discontinuous amount of fuel on the ground. So it wasn't enough to carry the fire. In that particular stand, we removed all the fuel away from the trees so that it wouldn't burn. However, that's still where the fire burnt the most, was at the base of the trees. It turns out underneath the moss, there is a thick layer of needles that has been accumulating for over 100 years, which you don't see because it's under the moss, but there's a ton of fuel right there at the base of the trees. We learned that we have to look at the conditions and have the right amount of moisture so that the fire can't go too hot. So it might be a prep burn first to get rid of some of the higher fuel concentrations.
It's a real balancing act with the fuel and the prescribed burn, because you need enough fuel for the fire to sustain itself and move through the area that you want burned, but you also don't want so much fuel that that you're going to potentially kill some of the trees that you're trying to keep.
No, exactly. And it's, as we said, fire was pretty much removed 140 years ago at colonization. So that knowledge there is still some of the knowledge, but it's pretty much, a lot of it's lost. So we're needing to learn again. And, between the cultural knowledge and Western science, finding that balance to make it work, and we'll get there.